Do we need to worry about somebody stealing the Creighton blueprint to try and knock off the Auburn Tigers?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I am Lindsay Crosby. He's Darrell Dapprich, filling in for Zach Blackerby. Zach should be back tomorrow. Again, reminder, his wife had a baby late last week, so they are doing parent things with the new baby. Darrell, I want to get to Auburn baseball versus Kentucky. Great weekend in Lexington. I want to get to the Sweet 16 matchup against Michigan. But first, I want to talk about this Creighton game because I feel like a lot of Auburn's losses this year in basketball have looked somewhat similar, and none of them really looked like what happened or what looked like it was happening after the first half on Saturday. And there are elements of what Creighton did that I don't think anybody's going to replicate. They were shooting over 50% from three in the first half and all of that. But was that first half against Auburn, was that more Creighton having the half of their life? Or is there something there that a team can go to and say, hey, this works against this Auburn roster, and if we want a shot to knock them off, we have to do that?
Great question. And I think the answer is no, because it's not sustainable. And let me give you two specific examples. First, on the offensive side, Creighton plays 4 of their 5 starters 32 minutes or more. If you want to use that as a blueprint for Auburn, good luck. Go ahead. Because although Auburn only played 7 guys Saturday, which, oh, by the way, is the only time you can get away with that when your opponent is playing 4 of their 5 32 minutes or more. Yeah. Auburn typically has more depth and will run more bodies at you. So if you try to use that template, it's not going to work. The second thing, yeah, of course people are going to want to make 9 threes in the first half. Creighton did that against Louisville, but guess what? They were 2 of 8 against Louisville in the second half and only hit 3 threes in the second half against Auburn. If you do that as a basketball team and come out and say, I'm going to keep chucking threes, and you go 3 of 12 in the second half, Auburn will bury you. So from an offensive game plan, you cannot, unless you have an absolute just bona fide career night where you hit 15 threes and you're able to sustain some of that hot shooting from 3 in the second half, it's not going to work. You can't do it if you don't have depth. And then from a defensive standpoint, everybody seems to fall in love with this 1-2-2 against Auburn. Oh, if you go 1-2-2, Auburn will get impatient. They'll chuck up threes. Broome will chuck up a 3 instead of trying to get in the paint. Yeah, that'll work for a while until Tahad Pettiford and Chaney Johnson start dropping floaters on your head. No one wants to take that shot anymore, Lindsay. It's the most underutilized. It's a dinosaur, the mid-range jumper. And you know why, and I know why. They either want to dunk on your head or they want to hit the step-back 3. Pettiford and Chaney are old school and hit the mid-range jumper just inside the elbow. And last time I checked, it still counts for 2 points just like a dunk does. So if you want to go 1-2-2 against Auburn, they'll find that soft spot in the zone. They'll find that little floater. They'll find that turnaround 6-footer that Chaney hits. And then it opens up other things, from Denver hitting threes and Miles Kelly. So go ahead, go 1-2. And Michigan can't do it because they got 2 bigs that, although are very, very physical and very tall, are very cumbersome and not very quick. They're a little bit, we'll talk about that more later, kind of slow of foot. That's not a strategy they want to impart. The only way I think you look at Auburn in a situation like this is you make Auburn beat themselves. You make them disinterested. You make them lazy. You make them sloppy. You make them force threes. You make them shoot with 5 seconds into the shot clock, like they did 7 minutes in the Alabama State game. That ain't going to happen in a Sweet 16 matchup. Sorry, Auburn ain't going to come out disinterested.
Yeah, to your note on on trying to replicate that first half. Even with Creighton getting all those free throws, I looked it up, 9 of 14, so 64%. It wasn't enough. And there was a quote.
Was that three-pointers, you mean? Or you said free throw? Was it three? Okay.
I'm sorry. 3-pointers, yeah, sorry.
I got you.
And Pearl in the post-game press conference, Bruce Pearl actually talked about that. And he said the halftime talk was easy. Guys, they've banged 9 threes. We've missed a couple inside shots. We're shooting 30%. He meant from deep. And we're down a bucket. Are you kidding me? Like it's even that, even being 9 of 14 from the 3-point line for Creighton was not enough for them to build any sort of meaningful lead. The biggest lead they had in the game was a 4-point lead. And that was with 18:04 left in the first half. Like looking at the box score, they have that as the biggest Creighton lead of the game. And all Auburn had to do, and they talked about it after the game, all they had to do was bring that 3-point shooting down to a normal level. And instead, to your point, they went way past that, and they brought them down to 23% from 3. They were 3 of 13. And so that was the difference right there. And to the depth, I do want to clean something up real quick. To the depth, Auburn did play 8 players, but Ja'Kai Howard had like 2.5 minutes. So it was a 7-man rotation. He was in there. He didn't collect any stats at all, literally. No rebounds, no fouls, no points, no attempts, assists, nothing. But it was like a 7-man rotation functionally, to your point, one of the smallest we've seen from Auburn. And it worked out because Creighton played for 4 guys over 33 minutes. They ended up playing a lot of guys. They got some walk-ons into the very end of the game, last 31 seconds, but they had a full 7-8 man rotation, but it was just rotating in one spot. And I don't think anybody else in the tournament is built with the depth that Auburn has. And when you look at a lot of those, I'm going to use a hockey term here and say those second lines, you're subbing in some of those other guys, they're a lot less experienced than Auburn's guys who are coming in. You've got a lot of guys who have played a lot of college basketball. I'm not worried, I don't think, about anybody copying this blueprint. Are you worried about anybody copying some of the blueprints we saw in conference play? Right? I want to say Texas A&M, what they were able to do, especially dominating the boards, what you saw Alabama do. Is any of that replicable by anybody in the field outside of maybe in Alabama?
Not concerned about Alabama replicating what they did because defensively, I don't know. I mean, obviously, Alabama was going to have, in my opinion, would have to score in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And how that game happened. I mean, Auburn could have won that game in regulation if Broome takes a better shot. You got beat at the buzzer. Tennessee and what they do defensively could cause problems for Auburn, and so could Florida, because Florida can go inside out on you. Mm-hmm. They have the template. They have the blueprint. They can score from the perimeter, and they can score inside. So those two teams, I think, would be a matchup problem. I will say this, and this is relevant because sometimes historically, history can be an indicator of how a particular team does in a season. And if you'll allow me to jump with the DeLorean and go back to the future, we have people that watch this show and listen to this show that are our age, my age. I mean, there are some longtime Auburn basketball fans that appreciate sometimes pulling from something that reminds us of a particular game, and I think it's relevant. I remember this Creighton game, when you talked about blueprint, what Bruce Pearl said at halftime, it is amazing you said that. And it is so imperative to understand that these things happen not in a vacuum and they can repeat itself. In the 80s, when Auburn hasn't won its first 2 NCAA tournament games by double digits since 1986. As much success as they've had in the tournament, this is the first time since 86, their first 2 games they've won. It just so happens in 86, a young Darrell Dapprich was watching Arizona and Auburn in the first round. Mm-hmm. And Lindsay, Arizona played as good as you could play. They hit every shot. They were shooting 70% from the field. And I looked at my best friend at the time and I said, dude, we're up 4. We're in trouble. And I remember texting this same best friend Saturday going, hey, deja vu, He's like, yep. He said Creighton is in trouble because they have played about as good as you can play, and they're up 2. And Auburn in the second half, I mean, the rest is history. What did they do? Outscored them, 15, right? I guess my math is telling me 13, 14 because they won by 2. Those things matter, even though it's a completely different era, a completely different decade. There is something to be said about playing a team, regardless if they think they have the blueprint or the template to beat you, playing absolutely as well as they can, and your coach coming in at halftime to tie this all together and go, guys, they can't shoot it any better than they did. We're not playing particularly well. Our best player at the time probably had 4 points. Janai Broome probably had 4 points, and we're down 2. Creighton's in trouble. You draw from that, and if the same thing does happen Friday in Atlanta against Michigan, you're fine because you've been there, done that.
And we're going to get into that Michigan matchup next right here on Locked On Auburn. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at GameTime. Darrell, can you imagine wanting to go to the Sweet 16 in Atlanta on either Thursday or Friday? At the time of recording, we don't know what time Auburn's playing yet. And getting your tickets from anywhere other than GameTime?
No, I mean, I use GameTime for everything. I just used them for hockey tickets when I went back home for a little bit and saw the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was a great deal. I got a lightning deal at the time, and I was very pleased with my seats. Same thing with the Sweet 16. Go on there, use the Locked On College for $20 off. It's a one. I love the fact that you can not only see where you're sitting, but again, click on those lightning bolts. Those lightning deals are clutch, and they're worth it.
I love the fact that you get an all-in price. It shows you after all of the fees and everything. I buy a lot of concert tickets, and whenever you're trying to get them from Ticketmaster or something, you'll see the price, and by the time you get to checkout, it's 40% higher. GameTime shows you the price right up front. So like Darrell said, download the GameTime app today. Promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Again, GameTime app today. Promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Welcome back to Locked On Auburn. Lindsay Crosby, Darrell Dapprich, filling in for Zach Blackerby, who is at home with their new baby. He should be back. I believe it is tomorrow is when they will be back. And I want to talk a little bit about this Michigan matchup. We talked a little bit about it on the live show on Saturday, where we had everybody and their brother in this room talking about basketball. But there's so many storylines here. What is the big, like if somebody's walking into this completely cold, Darrell, what is the one thing they need to know about the matchup of Auburn versus Michigan? Is it that you're bringing a former player in here? Is it the history between the schools? What is the one thing?
I think the one thing is who is going to be able to dictate their style of play and enforce their will and their style of play on the other. Michigan has twin towers. Danny Wolf, who, oh, by the way, played for Yale last year when they upset Auburn in the first round of the tournament. They've got the Golden Kid, Goldin, who's also 6'10", 6'11", maybe a 7-footer. So they have the twin towers. They love to – Big Ten basketball, you think about it, physical. They like to beat you up. So if they can play that style and they can hammer you and get you in foul trouble and get offensive rebounds and second chance points and limit your touches – that's what Michigan wants to do. Auburn, on the other hand, feels like their bigs are a lot quicker. I mean, Michigan's slow-footed. They don't move their feet on defense. So if Broome and Cardwell and Chaney Johnson can take advantage of that and get them in foul trouble, it will be a long day for Michigan. That's one aspect of it. They might cancel each other out in the front court. The back court is where I think this game's going to be won, and I think Auburn's got much more depth in the backcourt. I know the Trey Donaldson storyline. Love Trey Donaldson, but don't think Mike Burgo and Stephen Pearl don't know exactly what to do and how to defend Trey Donaldson. They do. And don't think Trey Donaldson, who's a tremendous player, I love the kid, he's going to be a little tight. If you don't think that he's going to be tight, he's got a heartbeat, he's got a pulse, he's a human being. It's the NCAA tournament, Sweet 16. He's facing his former team. And oh, by the way, there's this I'll show you factor. And when that happens, you press. Ask Alan Flanagan and Aiden Holloway. It matters. Now, sometimes you play your way out of that, but with the inherent pressure of a Sweet 16 matchup there already, I'll be interested to see how Trey Donaldson responds to the pressure of playing against somebody that knows how to guard him and wanting to really, I'll show you type situation. So the guard story is the story for me. Who is backcourt's going to show up and play better?
Yeah. Most of you watching this on YouTube, listening on audio, obviously you're everydayers, you know the story here. But for anybody who's kind of new to this, Donaldson transferred after 2 years at Auburn, and he is now finally getting what he wanted. He started 10 games in 2 years at Auburn. He started all 36 regular season games for Michigan, averaged 11.5 points in the regular season. Looked like four rebounds, 1 steal a game. And he's kind of like, he had some acknowledgement of what he's been able to do and that he's going to get to face Auburn. It's going to be really interesting to see, because these guys have all been so close. Like, they all knew him personally. And some of them, from what I've been told, took it personally when he chose to leave. And you mentioned other guys who have done that in the past, who have left and gone somewhere else, and how tough that's going to be. I expect it to be that way here as well. This feels like an Auburn win. I think that's pretty clear to say as of now. We talked about this a little bit on Saturday. What makes sense for a line for this game? Is this something where, is this going to be like, is Michigan going to give Auburn a legitimate tight run, or is this going to end up being more than the 7.5 that it's currently at as a time of recording on FanDuel?
And I think that whoever does these lines knows what they're doing. I mean, there's that old adage that Las Vegas doesn't have any ugly buildings, and there's a reason. They know what they're doing. The Bellagio ain't the Shake Shack right down the road. So I actually
think there is a Shake Shack in the Bellagio, though.
There is.
Yeah, which is funny.
It's run by some wise guys, too, so be careful. But I think that 7.5 is a great number. I think that's probably dead on. If someone said to me, Darrell, give me a score, and I will later, I think a 6-point, 7-point game is very realistic, meaning this game with under a minute to go could still be in doubt. Okay? And that's okay. Auburn lives there. They're used to that. Michigan, who, as I mentioned on Kyle Rush's show last night, I watched a lot of Big Ten basketball. And the reason why I did is because they played on Sundays. And so I wanted to, especially, the kind of season Auburn had, the Hayes in the barn on Saturday, SEC basketball is all done. Hey, let me watch some more basketball coming off that high, right? So I'd watch a lot of Big Ten basketball, and I watched a lot of Michigan games. I think that line is where it needs to be. It's a good number. I want to say this about Trey Donaldson, too. There are a lot of Auburn fans that are wishing him well. I love that. That's how Auburn fans should be. A lot of Auburn fans I'm seeing saying, I wish he would have never left. I want to put this in perspective for those fans. Had Trey Donaldson never left, Trey Donaldson would probably be your starting point guard. Denver Jones would be playing the 2, and Miles Kelly would not have come to Auburn. So you have to ask yourself, when you get all sentimental, like you're watching a Hallmark Christmas movie, which, by the way, has the same plot line all the time. When you're watching those movies and you get all sentimental and mushy, and I love Trey Donaldson, would you trade him straight up for Miles Kelly right now? That's the trade-off. That's what you need to think about going into this game. Because if you had Trey and you slide Denver to the 2, there's no room for Miles Kelly with Pettiford coming off the bench still like he would have. It's important to note that. And so, I love him. Sometimes we are a little bit nostalgic about things, and we need to understand the perspective of that. I like to get back to your original point. I think the line is probably where it needs to be. I probably think Auburn comes in just a little hair under that because Michigan's playing. They won the Big Ten tournament. They're playing good basketball. They won not Michigan State, but Michigan won the Big Ten tournament. So, with that being said, I also saw them get boat raced by Illinois on a Sunday. I saw Indiana beat them. I mean, they're susceptible. Ohio State, who Auburn killed, Purdue. Auburn's used to playing Big Ten teams. They know the blueprint. They know how they play, and they've had good success against them the last couple of years. They beat Indiana last year in Atlanta. They beat Ohio State this year in Atlanta, and they beat Purdue in Birmingham. So whatever Michigan does from a Big Ten standpoint of style of play, it won't be a surprise to Auburn.
Yeah, it's we'll make our official picks later in the week on the show. All of us will, but yeah, I feel pretty good about Auburn, and I might actually take Auburn to cover. I think this could be one of those games where it's closer in the second half, and that depth starts to pull away, and then at the very end, you get a little pop, maybe a kill shot in there, and you put the whole game away. So I might go with the over, but I still have time to change that. Darrell, you want to talk some baseball?
I do. I love baseball. I love talking about with my baseball compadre. So let's go.
We'll do that next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Lindsay Crosby, Darrell Dapprich here with you, wrapping up the Monday episode of Locked On Auburn again. Zach Blackerby should be back tomorrow, finishing up some last-minute fatherly stuff with the birth of their baby on Friday. Darrell, Auburn took 2 out of 3 from the Kentucky Wildcats. We're really pushing to get that sweep. Would have been a 5-0 weekend for Auburn athletics in Lexington. Ultimately didn't happen, but just really funny how this worked out. 2 8-7 wins, and then Sunday ended up being a 6-0 loss. But the officiating had a much, much bigger role than I think any of us expected in both games 2 and 3. For anybody who missed it, I think game 3 is the one where a lot of people are just kind of a lot in shock and surprise. And I think you were actually texting me when it happened. Long story short, Auburn got a player and a student manager ejected in the middle, I want to say the 5th inning of Sunday's game. I actually talked to that student manager via Zoom after the game. But long story short, they stopped play. The second base umpire started throwing guys out for Auburn because we found out later they warned both dugouts about dugout antics. And Auburn had 2 guys up on the rail who were doing Kentucky's row the boat motion, right? So they jump on the rail and they start doing the row the boat. The second base umpire warns them to stop. So Gabe Gross, assistant coach Gabe Gross, calls everybody in the dugout up to the rail to do it, and they started ejecting guys. I understand you gave warnings to both teams to cut out the dugout antics, but it's a game. Nobody was saying anything. They weren't chirping the umpires. They weren't yelling at each other. They were literally doing this. And if we can't do things like this in a dugout, what are we even doing playing a game? Maybe you need to stick to commercial real estate, which was it's this guy's day job, instead of officiating, if we're going to get mad about things like that.
It's a classic example of an umpire inserting himself into a situation where he wants to make himself bigger than the game. Now, full disclosure, I'm a little bit old school, and I hate those freaking antics. I hate them with a passion.
Yeah.
I hate the getting on the dugout and all that crap. It just it wasn't the college baseball era, but that's okay. I don't have to like it, and I'll adjust with the times. That's what the kids like to do now. My point is, if you let Kentucky freaking do it all day on Saturday and didn't give any warnings on Saturday, why come out Sunday and start ejecting people? I don't care that you should have given the warnings on Friday. If you're that butthurt about that rowing thing and those antics, then Friday at the home plate meeting, say something about it then. Yeah. Again, it's a different era. I watch baseball and I'm like, wow, they're really getting into it and getting into those chants and those cheers. And I feel a little bit indifferent about those because it's just not, to me, it's just a different thing. But I'm okay with it because everybody does it. Everybody does it. Okay. It's the thing now. People flip their bats a lot more than they did when I played. I get it. It's just a different. They stand at home plate.
It was a whole marketing. It was a whole marketing campaign from MLB. Let the kids play.
If that's what happens now, and that's the era we're in, you embrace it and move on. But make up your mind. Make up your mind. Don't let Kentucky do it the whole game Saturday, and then all of a sudden get conscious about it Sunday. Now, I don't know why,
or to jump in there, or enforce it equally at the same time that Auburn's getting 2 players or a player and a manager thrown out. There's a Kentucky player on the field outside of the dugout dancing at the exact same minute Nothing happened there, but we're going to turn around and throw out an Auburn manager for doing a row the boat motion from inside the dugout. It's dumb.
It reminds me of when Texas gets their feelings on their shoulders about the horns down thing.
Yeah.
Because you're mocking somebody else's tradition. So they take that, like if Kentucky got upset because, hey, that's our thing, and Auburn's mocking us, get over it.
Isn't it Minnesota's thing? Isn't it the Golden Gophers thing?
It is. It is. There's so many. I mean, first of all, to your original point, can Auburn play all of its games in Lexington? Between the football team absolutely taking Kentucky's manhood to clinching the SEC title in Lexington to this weekend, forget Hawaii. People need to start going on vacation to Lexington if you're an Auburn fan. But you're right. And I think the other thing is, I like when baseball self-polices itself. Mm-hmm. If you're that upset and you're that mad and you feel like Auburn's taunting you from doing that rowing motion, hit a dude, put it in his ribs.
Here's the problem. They hit so many guys this weekend, you wouldn't have known what was intentional and what wasn't.
But they don't do anything about that. They do something about the rowing thing. That's the thing that drives me crazy, and that's where it's an umpire wanting to make it all about himself. And I was fully shocked that it wasn't the old Scooby-Doo cartoons, and the umpire went like this and pulled off his mask, and it was Pat Adams umpiring second base.
Pat Adams at second base.
I was waiting. I was like, it's Pat Adams. He's got a mask on. But anyway, it was.
All of this kind of overshadows the big news of Ike Irish returning. He missed the Vanderbilt series with a fractured scapula from a hit by pitch that he took the week before. Irish made it back, did not catch in the series. He played outfield only, but picked up a hit again on Friday night, went 5 for 6 with 2 home runs on Saturday, and then went 1 for 4 on Sunday. I think Auburn only had 2 hits in that 6-0 loss. He had one of the 2. And so big news. This is now another series win for Auburn. They have just continued to, they have not lost a series this year, knock on wood. They're Tuesday night, they're in Montgomery, and then they go to Georgia, and they play the Bulldogs in Athens this upcoming Saturday. Gonna be really kind of interesting. It's also close enough to Atlanta where if you're going to Atlanta for the weekend for basketball, why don't you pop over and go watch it, especially if Auburn basketball plays on Thursday. You're already off of work anyway. You're not going to work on Friday, people. Go to Athens, watch baseball on Friday, and then come back for a Saturday game.
We already know they're playing Friday. We already know that. It is a Friday deal. And I've heard, at the time we're recording this, I'm hearing noon as a tip-off for Auburn, but it is Friday. So that'll be pretty interesting. We heard that. We'll confirm that, obviously, because by the time we record this, it will be factual or not. So it's just we're trying to throw a little light on that. I will say this. You start off your first 2 series against a traditional school like Vanderbilt, win that series. I think it's been a long time since Auburn won a series against Vanderbilt. Yep. Then you go on the road against a ranked Kentucky team who was 25th in the country coming into this, and you go on the road in Lexington and win that series. Just win series. I mean, I get it. You want sweeps and all that, but you're winning series right now, and you get one of the best players in college baseball back. Hey, keep it going. The goal should be let's go get the series this weekend.
Yeah, I don't want to make this sound bad, but you were doing so well despite Ike Irish not even hitting 300. He wasn't actually hitting that well before the injury, and you still won every series. You still have not, if I have this correct, you still have not dropped a game to a ranked team. I mean, you've handled your business, and to your point, it is incredibly hard to beat any baseball team 3 times. So the fact that you can go 2 out of 3. That's all we're asking. If you can win every series 2-1, you will host a regional in at the end of the season, and that's all we can really realistically ask for. So,
I pull for a professional baseball team that realistically I just would ask for 1 out of 3, and I don't even get that. So what can I say?
Paul Skeens pitches every 5th day. Is this going to be like a Jacob DeGrom thing where he gets
exactly right
support
The Pirates will win every 5th day, 80% of the time. 2-1. He's on the mound, and
he'll pitch 7 innings. He'll give up 1 run, and he'll get a no decision because you'll get an error in the a run in the 8th. There you go.
Because Tommy Pham will be playing right field. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dap, where can folks go to get more of you and all of your content and info?
You can follow me on X, Dap6410, Instagram, Darrell Dapp. I am with Zach Wednesdays and Fridays on Locked on Auburn, Sunday nights at 8 with Kyle Rush on The Barn, and then periodically some radio appearances Monday and Wednesday out of Auburn. So, yeah, it's been pretty busy. It'll be a busy week this coming week. Talk a lot of basketball.
I'm on X at Crosby Baseball. Again, the Barn Baseball Show. We're talking baseball every week. If you're an Atlanta Braves fan, bravestoday.com. Season starts on Thursday, so super busy there. Zach, again, back tomorrow. But in the meantime, this has been Locked on Auburn.